Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Any News, another quick content video covering Mushoku Tensei Season 2. I do believe it's Episode 7 we're going over this time. Thought it was a bit interesting, and I'm a bit curious as to how often this is going to happen as we check out these quick content videos as we're watching the episodes. A couple things that Any News mentioned in the last cut content video actually ended up happening, not in so much detail, but actually did kind of happen in this episode, and I'm just curious as to whether they're just like, switching things around, and if Annie is then going to cover it and then it happens again, are we like unintentionally going to be getting spoiled by stuff? It wasn't huge. It was like Sylphie's running routine and the can't remember what else it was. There was like two things I noticed, but yeah, let's see what else was left out from this episode, which I thought was really good. It was really good. It was really cool. It was quite funny as well in places, wasn't it?
It's not very often that we get to see Rudeus act like this, but it's when we do that we get moments like this.
I really wanted Sylphie, or Fitz, to take off the mask as well, or the glasses. Oh my god, I really wanted to know what was going to happen there. Whoa, sick. I loved it. the panties in the box. Roxy! Roxy! Roxy!
These were all scenes that went above and beyond how they were portrayed in the novels. As it is with most episodes, though, because the story focuses mainly on the perspective
I mean, it was cool as well. They knocked him out by just rocking the head.
of Rudy, not much was given for the backstory of the Beast Girls he was torturing. So, if you want to know more about them, why they're at this school and their reign of terror before Rudy, then
Let's
stick
find
around
out.
since that's what we're going to talk about here. That and the full extent of Rudeus's confinement of them. Episode 31, The Kidnapping and Confinement of Beast Girls, covering chapters 7 and 8 from Volume 8 of the light novel.
Okay.
Since last video I made the mistake of covering a side chapter I thought the anime would have skipped.
Alright, okay, he's acknowledged it. Cool.
From now on, if there's ever something major like that again, I'll first preface the section with a spoiler alert.
Okay.
Luckily, the spoilers this time were very minor,
Very
but I just
minor.
wanted to
Yeah,
apologize
yeah.
and make it clear that it's never my intent to spoil anything.
That's
no matter how
cool.
little
I'm glad
it
he's
is.
mentioned
These
it.
videos
That's
will
class.
always only ever cover up to where the anime has reached in the novels.
Okay.
So, I'm incredibly sorry if that last video ruined your experience for the next episode, and
Ah.
I promise I'll do my best to prevent that from happening in the future. But anyway, the whole intro with Sylphie missed quite a bit from what I talked about last video. There wasn't the mention of that Fitz lookalike sitting at Ariel's bedside, nor any exposition giving insight into Sylphie's relationship with Ariel.
Yeah.
They didn't even go into what Sylphie thought her ideal relationship with Rudy would be like.
Yeah, I thought it was going to go into that, but yeah.
So, if you're curious as to how Sylphie perceives both her relationships with Ariel and Rudy, then
Get
you
more
should definitely
detail
go
in
check
the
out my last video.
Yeah, you get more detail in
Moving on to after that, there was actually a whole section left out that gave backstory on both Linnea and Persena.
Oh.
It was a brief history on the beast folk, the Doldia, and how the two of them even ended up at university.
Cool.
I don't expect this to be covered later on, but since this is practically a sub-chapter in and of itself, here's some minor spoiler warning just in case.
Heads up, like that.
We already know Linnea to be the granddaughter of Gustav and daughter of Gies, but what you may not know is that Persena is not. While Linnea is part of the Didoldia, Persena actually comes from the Adoldia. She's the granddaughter of the current leader, Bulldog, and daughter of the next in line, Tertelia. Since both tribes are responsible for protecting the Great Forest, though, their lineage is practically identical.
Yeah, okay.
They're
cool.
both essentially princesses who will eventually take over as tribal leader. Now, the reason this is so important is because the Doldia have a responsibility tracing back to almost 5,500 years ago.
Whoa.
It was in the aftermath of the first Great Human Demon War where the humans had just won and become quite arrogant because of it.
Sword Art Online Alicization Season 2 was so sick.
With the beast folk living on land rich with lumber, it was only a matter of time until the humans would invade and try to make that resource their own. So, as numerous tribes and races faced imminent invasion, it was the beast god Geiger who would unite them and lead them.
Geiger.
He was a renowned hero that came from the Doldia tribe, one revered as the leader of all beast folk. That being the case, it was even after Geiger had died that the responsibility of protecting the forest would pass on to the Doldia.
I liked that bit of Season 1 where they were hanging out with the beast people and the trees and that was so cool.
A duty that's now been carried on for millennia. Nowadays, beast folk were expanding across the world, but with significant influence amongst the elves, dwarves, and hobbits, there was enough military power in the Great Forest alone to fight even Millis. In any case, the point is that Linnea and Persenna are direct descendants of Geiger.
Right.
Two heirs just like how Giaz and Ghislaine were themselves.
I like
As for
that they
why
mentioned,
were sent here,
like...
well, that's because Giaz
yes.
and Ghislaine were, well, stupid. They were a generation of descendants who turned out to be incredible screw-ups, mainly due to their lack of intelligence. So, in order to prevent that from happening a second time, Gustav ordered Linnea and Persenna to go and study abroad. Perhaps by living in a place where their authority and position had zero meaning.
That's quite funny. Like, right, we're so sick of our people being stupid, let's just do something smart, which is smart, and send them to school to be educated, so that we have less dumb people hanging around. We need some educated people up in these trees.
They could come to learn exactly what it meant to have such a thing. But instead of discrimination like how the girls expected, what they received instead was flattery and caution. Flattery from students who were trying to humor them, and caution from teachers too timid to approach them. It was becoming rather apparent that their position as princesses still held weight here.
Right, yeah, so they still are seen as kind of like royalty, and it's like, we can't do anything here.
So, what initially started out as them
really don't care.
walking around in fear from just the mere sight of humans quickly turned into an ego that made them feel untouchable. Especially when they found the unbeatable power of incanted magic combined with vocal magic. By using that with their already elite dexterity and strength, Linnea and Persenna found that they could defeat pretty much anyone.
Right, so that was what was happening there, because she screamed, so it's like the vocal stuff with it. Right, okay, that was cool. That was sick as well.
Eventually using it to extort, bully, and even blackmail.
My god.
Then, after a year of doing exactly that, the two had made themselves into the bosses of their own delinquent faction.
Nice.
A group that would terrorize the halls and even claim parts of the school as their territory.
Wow.
What stopped them from
Hostile
taking over the
takeover.
entire school was the arrival of a certain princess from Asura.
Huh?
The teachers who were so eager to serve them were now rapidly flocking to this true princess from a more noble society. Initially, Linnea and Persenna were willing to put up with it, but the more Ariel began to shine with her accomplishments, the more these two started to feel inferior to her.
The attention's being
Their
taken
resentment
away.
only grew as Ariel received praise for being an honor student, then even more so when she joined the student council. When it got to the point where they couldn't take it anymore, that's when they would start to mess with her. First by bumping her shoulder or spitting on the floor next to her, but then by splashing her with water and even stealing her underwear.
Oh god.
It was a continued escalation of harassment until Fitz would single-handedly put a stop to it.
Right.
The plan itself was a trap set up by Ariel, but the showdown was fought and won by Fitz alone.
Hell yeah. Sylphie's so capable, man.
She had defeated all 20 of Linnea and Persenna's goons all by her lonesome, leading to their entire faction getting expelled because of it. The only reason Linnea and Persenna weren't expelled with them was because once again their status had protected them. With no allies left and their social standing in the gutter though, the only place they could vent their rage was in the special classroom, a place where they would unfortunately take it out on Cliff and Xanaba. Aside from that though, there were no moves made towards revenge, and the two were actually attending class in earnest now. It would be a fair statement to say that they were perhaps rehabilitated.
Actually getting educated.
Thus the reason why Linnea declared themselves model students during their encounter with Rudeus. Now, switching to the actual content of the episode, when we get to the opening scenes with Julie, this whole training montage was supposed to be given from the perspective of Xanaba.
Oh, okay.
He would think to himself just how peculiar Rudeus's training methods were, then stare in awe as the results became apparent only a single month later.
Ah, right, because it was like Rudy being like, he doesn't think that I'm capable of this, but then, haha, she's doing it, yeah.
It was an impressive accomplishment that reassured him of why he'd chosen Rudy as his master. As for his thoughts on Julie, well, he was quite surprised by just how intuitive she was. Not only was she learning the native tongue rather quickly, but she also seemed to understand his orders even if she didn't know all the exact words of them.
Okay.
There were numerous times where she was able to do things correctly both on the first time and without further instruction. Something Xanaba wanted to make sure Julie understood though was just how important it was to value the craft that she was going to be mastering. You see, if she lacked passion for the very art she would be making, then Zanaba knew the whole endeavor would be pointless.
She was cute though, with like the little nods and that. And then when Rudy was kicking off at him about the Roxy statue and she hides behind him, it's just like, oh mate, because she could just sense something bad's gonna happen.
If she was gonna make figures the way that he wanted, then he wanted to make sure that she truly understood the magnificence of them. That was the only way to make her shine.
So cute.
When it came to Rudy's inquiry and subsequent revelation
He
next,
panicked so much, and Rudy's eye going red
this
here.
would be the first time in which Zanaba would truly
This is so good.
see his master angry. Before, he'd only ever
boss.
seen him respond with dispassionate politeness or self-deprecating deference, but here Rudy's murderous intent was palpable.
Yeah.
No longer was he speaking in his usual carefully modulated tones, but was instead tripping over his words as he showcased his profuse fanaticism. Personally, Zanaba didn't care too much for Roxy as a person, but if he was to declare that now in the heat of the moment, then Rudy was sure to murder him without remorse. It didn't matter if he was a blessed child or not, because no amount of supernatural strength was enough to endure the level of magic Rudy would unleash
Oh
on
yeah,
him.
God.
Even his body wasn't that resistant to it. So, with no choice but to tell the truth, that's when we were given the explanation for it all. Linnea and Persenna had challenged him to a duel, and it was after he lost that the price was Roxy. What the anime doesn't tell us is just how confident Zanaba was going into it. You see, as a blessed child who'd never once been defeated in Shirone, Zanaba had no doubt that he would be able to win against these two. Even if they used anything in the advanced tier or below, he would just grit his teeth and run straight through it.
Right.
The last thing Zanaba expected, though, was that a strange magic would paralyze him in place, then render him defenseless, leaving him open against a barrage of attacks that would ultimately defeat him. So, it was once Rudy had heard that this was the way things played out that his murderous intent would subside for something even more sinister. It was an expression that showed just how important figurines were to him.
Wow, that's great.
Initially, his lack of passion made Zanaba think he didn't love them all that much, but after seeing his reaction now, it was clear Rudy's feelings for them were far more fierce than anyone's.
Yeah.
So much so that Zanaba was certain Linnea and Persenna were going to die that day. At first, Zanaba was afraid of what he'd just started, but after realizing the powerful ally that was now at his side, that fear quickly turned to joy knowing revenge was right around the corner.
Let's get it.
Switching back to Rudy's perspective now, if there was one thing he hated most, it was bullying. Had they stuck to just barking orders, then maybe he could have let that slide since Fitz's intervention had put them in their place already. But it was the desecration of Roxy herself that made him understand why religious incursions happened all throughout history.
Oh no, you see her stomping on it. Oh my God.
To him, such a sin was absolutely unforgivable. So, as he planned his method of attack, his experience as an adventurer led him to approach it all calm and collected-like. He wasn't about to overestimate his abilities and end up losing just like how Zanaba did. No, since they had defeated a blessed child 2-on-1, Rudy knew that they were likely very formidable, much to the point that it was safest to consider them as strong as Eris.
Oof.
Now, despite not knowing exactly how strong they were, what he did know was exactly how they were going to attack. One will rapidly charge and use magic to confuse the opponent, while the
Of course, because he can see slightly ahead, can't he?
other would stay behind and immobilize the enemy with vocal magic. They were complementary roles that were also interchangeable between the two of them. It was as Rudy contemplated the best way to confront this that Zanaba would insist such preparations were unnecessary. I mean, to him his master was all-powerful and unassailable. A notion Rudy felt needed correcting since to his knowledge there were at least 4 people stronger than him.
Yeah.
The very thought was an immense shock to Zanaba, but with those being
what a
only the
beast.
ones Rudy knew, it was very possible both
Maybe
Linnea and
more, yeah.
Persenna could be part of that list as well. Besides, Rudy just wanted this victory to be absolute and flawless, so much so that he was actually willing to recruit both Fitz and Elena Lise to
Got the
fight
base
as
stood
well.
on the chest, but yeah.
Since both seemed busy though, a 2-on-2 was the only option available. It was a fight Zanaba wanted to initiate through the proper dueling customs of either Shirone or the Doldia tribe.
Formal dual invitation, Shirone, throw rotten fruit at opponent, Dolly. Oh.
But was instead disregarded for an ambush since this fight was the farthest thing from a duel. For Rudy it was a bona fide holy war. Now, because the beast folk's senses would reveal any and all surprise attacks, Rudy instead decided to just ambush them.
Yeah, just go
He
for
would
it.
scout their path to and from classes, then wait in the optimal position to intercept them. He
Excuse me,
expected
sorry.
them to skip out on class early, but because Linnea and Persenna were actually taking them seriously now, Rudy and Zanaba were left standing here for the entire duration. likely an hour or two of literally standing exactly how they were here. When we get to the actual fight, there isn't really too much to add other than Rudy wanting to negate Persenna's vocal magic with his disturb magic.
Right.
Ideally, that would have been the optimal move to counter her, but because he had no idea how that magic worked or even how the mana behind it flowed, he wasn't certain disturb magic would even work here.
Right, okay, so...
His Demon Eye was certainly helpful for dealing with Linnea, but with movements as sloppy as hers, a handicap like that wasn't even necessary. Her attack was a stark contrast from what he would have expected if dealing with Eris. She would have charged straight towards him, never even let herself get hit by his counter, then, in the off chance that she did get knocked down, she would have grabbed his leg here and snapped his tibia. Of course, Rudy would have responded differently as well, but the point was that far more skilled fighters would have lasted longer. Sure, Eris does have experience fighting Rudy personally, but someone like Paul was able to counter his Quagmire instantly, even after having never seen it before.
Yeah.
So, either Linnea and Persenna were actually quite weak, or Paul and Eris were actually incredibly strong. He wasn't sure considering all the extremely powerful people he'd fought up until now. In any case, the whole captivity scene after this was pretty much as we saw. There was a bit of additional back and forth between Linnea and Persenna, but the only thing worth noting was their recount of how Zanaba stayed late into the night trying to collect every shattered piece of the Roxy figure.
Bless him.
It didn't matter how small it was, because Zanaba wasn't going to leave behind even a single fragment. It was an act of respect that filled Rudy's heart with affection for him.
Right.
This, combined with the fact that the figure was easily fixable, had subsided his rage just a little bit, but not enough to let them go since they didn't quite seem remorseful enough. Sure, they were apologetic for desecrating someone's god, but they didn't seem the same for destroying another person's precious property. Enough that if Rudy was to let them go now, he was certain they would just end up doing it again one day. So, in order to prevent that from happening, Rudy would ask Zanaba what he thought a fitting punishment was. Initially, he wanted to smash them the same way they did to Roxy, but since killing them was definitely out of the question,
Yeah, we can't be
he
doing
instead
that.
settled on selling them as slaves to the Asura Kingdom.
Oh.
He'd heard they had an intense love for beast folk there and was content with breaking an international treaty to do so. Sure, the very act would likely start a war between Shirane and the beast folk,
God,
but
imagine.
to Zanaba that was a small price to pay if it meant getting his revenge. He had zero consideration for self-preservation, unlike how Rudy did. So, with those not being very practical, the only other option was to ask Fitz, leading to that whole discussion in the library. This wasn't shown in the anime, but the way Rudy had justified his actions was by saying he was friends with the tribal chief. It was a segue into the whole story about how he'd ended up befriending them. Yet another tale showcasing just how amazing he was to her. Now, if you're wondering why Linnea and Persenna ended up the way that they did here, well, in addition to the hunger which had become unbearable, their enhanced senses made being trapped in a dorm filled with men absolute torture.
Oh.
Reason being that the intent of those around them was so incredibly potent that every footstep they heard had made them fear it was the end of them. So it wasn't just a lack of sustenance that made them fold, but also a constant state of fear lasting almost 24 hours.
Damn.
It was more than enough time to convince them to become Rudy's followers. In case they did start to rebel again, though, the paint Fitz applied read that they were a dog and cat who had lost to Rudeus. They only had to keep that for a single day, but the paint on their backs would have to stay for a little bit longer. There were several embarrassing statements Fitz wrote which she mentioned would remain for 6 months, kind of like an extra layer of caution for them. But yeah, that was pretty much it for the episode.
Cool. Awesome. I'm glad he acknowledged that stuff had been mentioned prior, and the potential spoilers mentioned, yeah, can't really argue with that going forward. So, cool. Yeah, interesting stuff. Not a lot of changes, but it's nice to see the little details that, they kind of leave out. I love these cut content videos. They're absolutely boss. And thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video upload, link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is the last spot challenge. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments below. Let me know that you watch some future videos. I'll see you guys next time.